But you don't have to work so hard. You've done everything you needed to do. Your family is strong. They're ready. They'll be okay. And then I would sing some more. And then I'd encourage him. You're going to be all right. And within about a half an hour, he took a deep breath and he let it out. And that was the end of his breath.
Welcome to Creepalachia. I'm a little hoarse today because we just had the backyard brawl and it was totally worth it. But also, I'm very excited today to talk about death with someone from the Eastern Panhandle. Finally, I think you're the first Eastern Panhandle person.
No kidding.
Yeah, to come in.
Well, I'm very honored.
So thank you for making the long trip. Tracy Seffers, you are what is called a death doula.
Correct.
Okay. Now, before we get into that, give me a little background on you and where you grew up and all that good stuff.
So I grew up in Fort Hood, Texas. I was born in Fort Hood, Texas. I was raised a little town outside of there. I was an Army brat. Dad was stationed in the Army there. And when I was about 10 years old, we moved to Arkansas, which is where I did most of my growing up. Went to college there, met my husband at college at freshman orientation, oddly enough. And
congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Yes, he's still my husband.
Hey, good job.
I told him we had to wait until I got my degree. And so I graduated one Saturday and we got married the next Saturday. Nice. And then I headed to Virginia to do my master's degree. Both of my degrees were in English. So after that, my husband was stationed in what was then West Germany, in the Army. And I became a field registrar for one of the American community colleges, City Colleges of Chicago, that serves the military overseas. And that's what I ended up doing with my career. I had plans to go into the teaching faculty and go on for a PhD and teach poetry and all of those things. But I became a registrar, serving higher ed, making sure that students got what they needed to progress to degree and seeing them across the stage. And so that's what I've been doing now for umpteen years. And I'm getting ready to retire in February from Shepherd University, where I currently serve. A couple years ago, probably during the pandemic, I started thinking about retirement and what I wanted to do. After retirement, I knew I wanted to keep working because I'm a working girl. I've never been one to not work, not serve in some capacity. And it was at that time that I thought about what had been a really a watershed moment for my life, and that was the death of my mother. In 2001, she was diagnosed with a final recurrence of breast cancer that she had dealt with back in the 70s before we ever moved to Arkansas. She lost both breasts to the cancer and survived all of it. And not only did she survive, but one lone breast cancer cell survived, latent in her body. And 20, 30, however many years later, it was triggered again and went to her brain and metastasized from there.
My goodness.
I know. So that was 2001, early 2001, she got that diagnosis. She sought treatment. She rallied. She had a great summer with all of my brothers and sisters, going to visit them in where they were living now in Florida. And they re-roofed the house and they took her everywhere and they did all kinds of things, which I couldn't do because I was working in higher ed.
Mm-hmm.
And then at around September, it was right after September 11th.
Wow. I'm so sorry.
No. Around September 11th, and I really think that it was that collective trauma that we all shared in at that point that just kind of took everything out of her. It took all of that energy that she had enjoyed over the summer, and the treatment stopped working, and the doctor said there's nothing more we can do. And so I got that call from my mother at the end of September. And so I said to my husband, I said to my boss, this is my part to play. I didn't know why, but I said, this is the time that I need to be there. Mm-hmm. And so I left my job and I left my family. We had 2 little ones. Yeah. And moved in with mom and dad. So mom was under hospice care at home. And I could tell not long after I got there that my dad was not taking this well. And of course he wouldn't. This was his partner of over 50 years. Mm-hmm. And, but I could tell the way he responded to the hospice nurse who would come every week or so to check in on mom and to take her vitals, that she was telling him things that he could not receive from her, mm-hmm. that she would start talking and I could see him just glaze over. And so I knew that was my job then, to listen, to take notes. And then after the hospice nurse left, when dad kind of calmed down, I'd put on a pot of coffee and I'd say, Dad, this is going to be a hard conversation, but we have to have it. So this is what we're going to see happening to mom over the next week or so. This is what we need to do if this happens. And he could hear it from me when he couldn't hear it from the nurse. And so I had to have conversations with him about the fact that the cancer, the dying process, was taking calcium out of her bones, making them very, very brittle. And so every morning when he tried to haul her out of the bed and into the chair and into, the wheelchair to her easy chair and back again at night, that every day he did that, it was likely at some point soon that her bones would be so brittle that he would break something. Mm. And we wouldn't want that to happen, Dad. So she needs to stay in bed. Her body needs to rest. Terrible conversations you never think you're going to have with a parent.
Oh, no. Yeah, I could imagine.
But absolutely necessary. And because he understood what was happening and what was coming, he could spend the next week being present with mom in a way that his fear, particularly fear of the unknown, made it impossible for him to be present with her. He was too taken up by fear. Mm-hmm. And so I continued to do that kind of interpretive work and helping him care for mom. And then at the very end, the last couple of days, I just sat by her bedside and sang to her. And I sang every song I had in my repertoire. I got to their bookshelf and pulled down the old Armed Forces hymnal that they had used when he was in the military. And I sang hymn after hymn after hymn. And that was my last service to my mother.
Mm. Wow. How beautiful, but also devastating.
Mm. Yeah. Hard, but beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, that's why I wanted to reach out, and I'm thankful Adra found you, is, it's important we talk about this stuff because, we like to think, often we're going to be here forever.
Oh, of course.
And then eventually you're like, kind of sore all the time. And then, you start to figure out like, well, it ain't going to be forever.
Yeah.
We don't know how long it's going to be. And you being an English major, I apologize. I'm going to obliterate the English language today.
Don't worry about it.
But Shepherd University, I'm well aware of them. They've come down to Huntington and done a lot of volunteer work with an organization I know,
absolutely,
Coalfield Development.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's one of our graduates.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Brandon?
I believe so.
Yeah, Dennison, shout out.
Yeah.
Heck yeah. Well, that's cool. All right. So you kind of thinking about that made you want to pursue, would you call this a retirement plan, or like what would you call it?
It is a very, very sad retirement plan. No. It's my second career, my second calling, I guess. I've always felt that my work as a registrar was a calling, in the way that vocation stands for calling. The root of the word vocation is the same as the root for the word vocal. And so it is a calling to do something, to be something, to stand in a particular place and help. And that's what my work as a registrar has been. It's always been student focused. What do they need? What do they need to know? What do they need to be able to do to manage their own careers, to prepare for what they want to be in the world, right? And so I've thought about how I got from one to another. How did I get from this calling to that calling? What makes an English major want to be a registrar to begin with? And then what makes a registrar want to be a death doula?
Yeah.
And in my mind, I've made sense of it in that as a registrar, I've stood at the thresholds with generations now of students, sometimes literally generations, where a mother has gone through and then her grown son and then his kid has started. It's been wonderful in that sense. But standing at the threshold where they are poised to leave high school, leave childhood behind and step into their adulthood in college and figure out what that means and figure out that period of growth. And then at the other end, to stand at that next threshold as they finished their degrees and went across the stage and stepped into the life of the person they were meant to be. And it's been such an honor to do that. It's been such a lovely work to be there in that way for students. And this is just another threshold.
Yeah. That's what I was going to relate it to, is like you're assisting people into kind of starting their life. Now, some, will go back to college when they get older, different things. And now you're helping people transition
to whatever that next
to the next part.
Is.
Yeah. Wow. So now a doula is that kind of like a midwife for? Because we'll talk about what a death doula is, but I want to make sure, like, what's the definition of a doula?
Right. Doula comes from the Greek, and it simply means, and if there are any Greek speakers, forgive me, but Dr. Google tells me that doula simply meant, the translation was a servant or a helper, and I like that. I like that definition. Thinking about it both for the birth doula that we're more familiar with, and now as an end-of-life doula or death doula. I actually use the phrase end-of-life doula to talk about what I do, because my work can actually begin in advance of the moment of death. in fact, if I'm only called in to serve in those moments, really the patient doesn't have the opportunity to benefit from the services that we can provide for them. So there's a whole list of things like advanced directive planning, getting the paperwork in place, doing legacy projects, to do special projects that will embody who you are for your grandchildren and their children, planning what you want your environment to be like, planning what you want your vigil to be like. Who do you want around you? Who do you not want around you?
Yeah.
Yep. So all of those things can happen well in advance of the point at which a person is dying or preparing to die. So end of life doula probably says more about the work that I do. But the word doula is essential to it because I am there as a companion, as a helper. And the way I use the birth metaphor to talk about my work is that generally a birth doula is a different person than the midwife. It doesn't always happen. They can be the same person, but the midwife will usually be the one who's working directly with the medical team to make sure that if everything's okay, I'm going to help birth this baby. The doula has been there all along, helping the mother, reassuring the mother, doing education. Here are the stages of labor. This is what you can expect. This is what's your plan? What do you want to happen? If everything goes perfectly, you want a water birth or, whatever that is. And what's plan B if something happens and you can't have that? So all of that planning and education has been happening well before the water breaks, at which point the midwife and the medical team kick into high gear. And the doula is there coaching and helping and reassuring and encouraging. And that's how I use that as a good comparison for how I'm helping the person prepare for the passage through death. Mm-hmm. There's actually quite a lot of physical connection between what happens in labor and almost in reverse what happens in the dying process. And my sister and I actually noted this when we were with our mother as she was her body was preparing to die. Just like a newborn will mostly sleep and then gradually have more and more awake time. Will learn how to eat, will learn how to speak, will learn how to become mobile. In reverse, a person's whose body is beginning the dying process will reverse those gains. And so they'll become less and less mobile, less and less social. They'll lose more and more of the need to eat and to drink until they're sleeping, mostly with a few wake times during the day, if any, until they're finally sleeping. And then it's just breath and the next breath and the next breath until there's no more breath. And so it's a beautiful, it's the cycle coming full circle.
Yeah.
In a beautiful way. So it makes sense that at both sides of that spectrum, you have a helper. We all need help.
Yeah.
Yeah. We help each other.
That's probably the best explanation of anything I've ever heard. I mean, it's, you're just so intelligent. I'm really and y'all, Tracy drove like 4.5 hours to get here. So thank you for doing that.
I only almost wrecked once, so that's a good day.
Please don't. Please. My goodness, we need you in this world. So All right. I kind of want to start back from what you said because I didn't realize that. And I think a big thing that a lot of us don't do is death planning.
Absolutely.
Kind of figuring out like finances, figuring out like who gets what, figuring out like, what am I going to do at 70 when I can't cut all this grass? Stuff like that. Yeah. And then it all of a sudden pops up on you. And then, you mentioned about people you don't want around, like the vultures sometime come around when that stuff starts occurring.
Yeah.
Of course, majority of families are more loving than not, but people know what I'm talking about out there. So what are some things that we need to think about at like 40, maybe, for instance?
Well, if you have a partner, you have children, any dependents, putting together those, getting your papers organized from the beginning and keeping them organized. And I say that knowing that there's like 2 or 3 parallel stacks of paperwork that I keep on my counter at all times that don't get filed in a timely way.
Sure.
Until I have family coming in for Christmas, and then I'll do a mad filing binge. But getting those accounts, the websites, the passwords, getting for your bank account, your retirement account, your all of those, what happens if I get hit by the bus? It goes to my partner, it goes to my child. Getting all of those dependents taken care of. And then, at any point, once you have those obligations in your life, creating a will, doing that with your partner, the advanced directives, the advanced care directives, are what I'll work with a family. And those are in particular guiding the medical team and the family. Once I'm sick enough and maybe incapacitated enough that I can't articulate what I would want or prefer. So there are a number of documents that you can use. There's the living will, which you can get online at any place. West Virginia actually has a really, really great end-of-life website, westvirginiaendoflife.org. And they have all of the advanced care directive paperwork that you can just pull right offline and print those out, get them notarized or blessed by whoever needs to bless them. But there's a number of them. The living will, do I want a feeding tube? Do I want to be kept alive on a breathing tube? There's 5 wishes that kind of goes into more detail about different aspects of the end of life. There are medical forms that if you have a terminal diagnosis, your doctor will actually work with you. You can ask for that to be in your medical file. And that actually creates a medical order that is transferable. It's transported with you. It remains in your medical file from now until you don't need it anymore. Mm-hmm. To say to the medical team, I don't want extraordinary measures, or I do want extraordinary measures. Whatever you want to kind of put into your medical file, that obligates the medical team in a way that even the living will or the 5 wishes document does not. The living will expresses your wishes, but if your family calls 911, for example, they're not, the medical team is obligated to do whatever it takes. Mm-hmm. And they will override the living will or the 5 wishes. But the medical forms that go into they're called the MOLST or the POLST forms, depending on what state you're in, will actually sit in your medical file, and they will obligate the medical team to provide or to withhold the treatment that you've specified.
Gotcha.
So there are lots of details, lots of ways to do it, but West Virginia End of Life is a great resource.
That's good to know. Well, I've always heard about the do not resuscitate thing. Is that what you're speaking about, or is it more complicated?
It's more complicated than that. Do not resuscitate is for a 911 or if you end up in an emergency room. But again, those, depending on the circumstances, might be overridden. For example, if I can't communicate and my husband steps in and says, I want you to do whatever is necessary, the medical team will do it. There is a medical power of attorney, so that if there's something that I haven't articulated in one of these documents, I authorize now whoever I decide, my husband, my eldest child, whoever is appropriate, to make those decisions. So that's an important distinction. A lot of times family members don't want to know because they don't want to be responsible. They don't want to have to make the decisions. But if you put your wishes into one of these documents that express your preferences, then their job, if you can't advocate for yourself, is to advocate on your behalf for things that you have already articulated. So they don't have to make the decision. They just have to say to the medical side of the house, hey, this is what my mom wants. And we have documentation. So they don't have to make that decision. If that hasn't been laid out in any way, then a medical power of attorney would designate that my daughter gets to make those decisions on the spot, on the fly, which is not great, but it's better than having someone who doesn't know me at all make those decisions for me.
Sure. And someone may have a super awesome daughter that they trust and, shout out to my father-in-law. But anyway, that's all good to know. So about the financial side, so like, do you ensure people are on your accounts or if you don't do anything, does it go to the next of kin? Like, what's the complicated?
Well, I'm not a lawyer, so let me just put that disclaimer out there.
Gotcha.
But I think if you don't have beneficiaries designated, or a will or something that that stuff ends up in probate.
Gotcha.
And that it goes through a whole court process and a discovery process, and it draws your family into this lengthy process. So again, this is not something that you're doing for yourself necessarily. It's for your surviving spouse, your partner, your children, so that they don't have the burden of trying to figure it out. And there are a lot of great resources out there to get that set up. Your friendly neighborhood death doula, for example. But there are also really good resources like the NOK box, N-O-K. You can Google that, and it's on Amazon and everywhere else. It's called the Next of Kin box. And it has all of the categories of paperwork that typically are necessary at the point when someone has died that their next of kin need to get to. And so it pre-organizes it for you. You just have to put things in the right slot.
Oh, wow. And
fill out the details. And so it makes it really simple. There's also a series of spiral bound, they look like journals. And I have a couple in my house. One I use with the Death Cafe just as an example of how people can organize their information. It's called, I don't have to worry about it anymore. It's your problem now because I'm dead is the subtitle.
Oh, wow.
And so they're just really kind of fun and a little lighthearted, if you can imagine, ways to get out what is sometimes a really tough subject.
Oh, yeah.
To talk about with your family. So, you hand your kid, your adult child, one of these books, and I've got one of these books, and we're going to do this, and you're going to do this, and we'll do it side by side. And then we'll make sure that we know what's going on with each other. Mm-hmm. And so it's a hard thing. It doesn't make it easy, but it gives you something to organize the work so that it's not so emotionally fraught and overwhelming.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Then you just go to Cracker Barrel and like, hey, all right, let's play the pig game here.
Yeah, there you go.
But no, that's great to know. So you're like a liaison when it comes to things like that, of like getting them in touch with legal representatives to set up trusts, and you can do those types of things to help them.
Well, I could probably make references,
Gotcha.
but they would have, the families would be in charge of making those kinds of arrangements.
Gotcha. Okay, good deal. All right. So that all makes sense. So do you have to be certified to do what you do? Like, what are the steps of becoming, and starting your business? How long has it been going? It's not just recent, right?
It's like the past 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. So what did you have to do initially to kind of start?
I went through a training program. There is no national level certification for end-of-life doula, the way there is for a social worker or a paramedic or anything like that. And there are good reasons why that's so. But there is actually a conversation happening among end-of-life doula organizations in the U.S. and across the world about how to create that. What would it look like if we had a national level certification for it, so that it would give it. It would let other people in related professions the understanding that there is deep level learning and practice, thoughtful practice associated with becoming an end-of-life doula. I took a 6-month-long course through an organization called Doula Givers International. That was founded by a woman, Suzanne O'Brien, who was an oncology nurse and a hospice nurse for her entire career, and who stepped out of that to become an end-of-life doula when she saw the gap between what home caregivers have to do. Right? When the hospice nurse leaves, they can visit maybe once a week. And when the hospice nurse leaves, who is on duty? It's the family, who has no medical training. They have no training at end of life. And so she designed a training program to help bridge that gap. And so her training was really thorough in kind of the common disease processes that lead to a hospice stay, and what the non-medical doulas are non-medical. We don't administer medication or prescribe it, but we can help the family. We can reinforce with the family the teachings that the hospice nurse leaves with them. Mm-hmm. We can explain the things that are happening, even though the hospice nurse has told them every time she's visited. But like my dad, sometimes when that fear and shock of facing my parents' death or my partner's death, that fear and trauma get in the way of being able to retain or learn something deeply. And so having another voice who can reinforce that really helps. So she took us through all of those end-of-life processes and the common medications and the side effects and how they're administered and why and what to look for and how to help the family manage the tug and pull of their regular lives, their work or family obligations, and then this huge elephant in the room of this caregiving as my loved one dies. So it was really thoughtful, really thorough preparation. So I have that certified training. It's not a certification in the national sense.
No, makes sense.
Yeah. Then I've done some other kind of follow-on coursework, continuing education in this space with some of the other organizations. There's NEDA, who is the National End-of-Life Doula Alliance, and INELDA, who is the International End-of-Life Doula Association. They all do kind of similar things. INELDA does more training than NEDA does. NEDA is more about kind of leading the national conversation around establishing professional standards, establishing the scope of practice, the ethics of the field. And so I appreciate all of the work that they do to kind of keep us prepared and to update our training kind of on a continual basis. But that's what I have in the doula space. I've also just used my local resources. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
I've been trained by our regional hospice, which is Hospice of the Panhandle. Excellent organization, amazing people.
Bunch of hospice coming in on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah.
No kidding.
Yep.
Okay.
It's a month of death, Tracy. So thank you for being here.
Yeah. Happy to kick it off.
Yeah.
And then our regional VA medical center is based in Martinsburg, not far from Hospice of the Panhandle. And so I've trained with both of those, and I volunteer with both of those regularly. With hospice, with the VA hospice unit, I've trained as an 11th hour angel. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I'm not.
It's a national program called No Veteran Dies Alone. Oh. And so this is a kind of a subset of the hospice volunteers who are trained to sit vigil with a veteran who is in the last days to hours of their life, and they don't have family local. Mm. And so in order to prevent a veteran from dying by themselves alone, we go in shifts and we relieve each other and make sure that someone is with that vet when they pass. And that is very, again, hard. It's a hard experience, but it's also absolutely sacred. It is. It's hard to describe how time begins to change when you're at the bedside with someone who is in those moments, in that tender space. There's no sense of the passage of time outside. It can feel like you have been there for hours. And it's, maybe just a half an hour. Yeah. But it feels like you've been there for eternity. It kind of takes on a mythic scale. It's time out of time. And I was just with a veteran who they called me in to sit with him. And they knew he was very close, but no family close by. And one of my other trainings is as a threshold singer. I don't know if you're familiar with threshold singing. There is a whole international organization of threshold choirs.
What is this?
Worldwide, yeah. These are singers who are specially trained. We have a unique repertoire of music that we sing in 3-part harmony, a cappella, at the bedside of someone who is ill or recovering or especially dying. And so Shepherdstown has its own threshold choir.
Wow.
And I've been part of that for about the same time that I've been following this work. And it's amazing music. It's very simple music.
You know what I'm going to ask?
What?
Can you sing?
Oh my God.
You don't have to. Don't feel under pressure. But I mean, you tell me on this show, we have musicians. Okay. So you tell me you're a singer, I'm going to ask. Yeah. But yeah, no, you don't have to at all. But yeah, no pressure there.
But this veteran, at the VA hospice, we have inside the closet, when a patient comes in, they do a form called All About Me, and the family helps them fill it out. And it's, what I did, where was I in the military, how many kids, do I have pets, what do I like to do, what don't I like doing? And so I checked that for this gentleman. And he was a singer. He loved music and he loved singing. So I sat with him and I sang and I sang and I sang, just like I did for my mother. And I take a break every once in a while and I would tell him, you're working so hard. It's hard labor dying, just as hard as it is to bring a baby into the world. It's hard work. I said, you're working so hard, but you don't have to work so hard. You've done everything you needed to do. Your family is strong. They're ready. They'll be okay. And then I would sing some more. And then I'd encourage him, you're going to be all right. And within about a half an hour, he took a deep breath and he let it out. And that was the end of his breath.
What's that like to witness?
I don't have the privilege of knowing these people for a long time. I don't have that long history. So I don't face that moment with the same weight of a lifetime of memories, that I'm losing this person. Again, I'm always struck by what a privilege, what an honor it is, especially for veterans, to sit in that space, to be asked to be the one to witness, to hold space, and to see these people as they struggle and as they step over into whatever is next. It's a great privilege. It's a great privilege. And as beautiful as it is difficult. There was back in the spring, my family knew that our dad, who lived for many, many years after his wife, our mother, died. But we knew that he was fading. So he was late 90s at that point. And for the past year, maybe, my brothers, who all live in Texas, had spelled each other for 3-month periods to come and live with him, because we could tell from the visits that he wasn't eating right in between visits. He wasn't taking care of himself the way he usually was. He was a military man, always very neat, and that was just part of his routine, personality, and so that was changing. So we knew that he needed to be, someone needed to be with him. And so it was the boys who stepped up. The boys, they're in their 60s and 70s.
Yeah. Still boys. Come on.
They're still boys to me anyway. But they did that work of coming out and staying with Dad. And then at the last month, they were all mostly there. And there came a weekend when they kind of let the rest of us know, he's close. He's close. So if you can make it, come home. My sisters live in Florida, so they were right there and could be there. I was where I was preparing for commencement. And the registrar doesn't leave.
Yeah, putting on your cool robe.
Yeah, all the doodads.
Yep.
And I ended up with an assignment at the VA of a vet who was close to that moment. And so I had gone in Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, and Wednesday night came around, and I was with my vet. And I told him, when I sat down, and I said, Mr. So-and-so, this is Tracy again. They're not responsive at this point, but they can hear. And so we trust that they hear what they need to hear. But I always introduce myself again. It's Tracy. I'm back, and I'm going to sit with you. But that night, I said, I'm going to sing for you. And I hope you don't mind, but my dad, who's a vet, is, he's dying too. And I hope you don't mind, but when I sing for you, I'm going to be singing for him too. And there's a principle that Suzanne O'Brien and Doula Givers teaches us about intentionality and energy and a quantum physics principle called non-locality. And I don't pretend to know the physics of it or the mathematics of it, but it essentially allows, or it's the fact that we can, with our intention, send our energy to someone that we're not with. I think Reiki must work on the same principle, the Japanese energy healing, because I know Reiki practitioners who send energy to someone who is ill many miles away. I don't know how that works.
I had one in.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. And it's really, really interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I believe in energy for sure.
Yeah. But. And so I set my intention, and I told the veteran that that's what I was doing, because my dad was probably dying. So I sang, and I sang, and I sang, and I sang. And sure enough, about half an hour before I was supposed to leave, he took a deep breath, bigger than I'd seen all night. And that was his last breath. And so I called the nurse and had them come and check and make sure that what I had observed, that I'm not mistaking it. I think he's passed. And so they did their checks, and he's gone. And so they started to prepare, what they need to prepare for that moment. So I packed up, and when I'm at the VA hospital, my phone's off. You can't get cell signal anyway. So I just turned my phone off. And so as I left the hospital, the hospice, I turned my phone back on, and I started getting messages coming through, multiple messages from my brothers and sisters. And about a half an hour earlier, right at the same time that I was singing this vet home, my dad also passed.
No way.
Yeah. So,
wow.
I have to believe for my own heart that he felt my song too, and knew that I was there with him and loved him.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So it does get very, very personal, and, but it's lovely work. It's hard work, but it's beautiful work.
Man, it sure is. It sure is. I'm so glad you're out here doing this. How many, let's just call it transitions. How many have you witnessed since you began a couple years ago?
I've served so many folks in both hospice organizations. I've been present for probably fewer than 10.
Gotcha.
So I'm not always there right at the threshold. Sometimes we don't quite make it there. Every other Tuesday, our threshold choir goes and sings at hospice, and it's whoever the nurse or the social worker have determined who are on the floor, who are in greatest need of that kind of comfort. And we headed out. We were at the hospice one Tuesday when the mother of a colleague we knew was in hospice. But by the time we got around to that wing, she had passed. And so we didn't get a chance to sing for her before she died. And so I went to my colleague and offered. She may still be able to hear. She may be here with you. But even if not, can we sing for you all? And they said, yes, that would be lovely. And so my group went in, and it's just 3 of us. We don't actually bring the entire choir to a single hospice room. That would be overwhelming.
Sure.
So we go in 3s or 4s maybe to sing. And so we sang for the family, and their mother is there in the bed. But she's no longer with us. And we just sang. And it was what it needed to be at that moment. So, but yeah, probably fewer than 10 actual moments when I was physically present.
Sure.
There was one really memorable one. The hospice was hosting a WVU medicine. She was doing a practicum, I think in her first year of her MD work. So they're getting them into every medical space that they can to give her those experiences. And so she heard that this time I was coming on as a therapeutic musician. That's a whole other thing that I do. We haven't even talked about that.
Oh, yeah. We'll get into that. I'm going to have to look up this threshold music. It sounds so comforting.
It is amazing.
Yeah.
And they do have a website, Threshold Choir International. And they have videos of threshold choirs doing what they do.
It's awesome.
It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
It's very non-sectarian music. We don't sing Amazing Grace. We don't sing, popular, kind of religious songs. Part of the reason we don't is because we never know what the faith tradition or faith life of that person is. They may not have a faith tradition. And so we may come in and sing something that sounds great to us, but doesn't mean anything to them.
Yeah.
The other reason is that as a person is dying, the best service we can provide to them is not only comfort, but something that will help ease their way. In other words, we don't want to pull them back and ground them into a set of memories that holds them in this life if what they need to do at this point is release into the next stage.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of my therapeutic music training as well. So we don't sing things that are familiar. But it's music that's been written specifically for these spaces. And they talk about community and peace and comfort and love, but nothing particularly religious.
It's beautiful and so respectful because like you said, like if someone spends their whole life, you know, living as a Muslim, and then you sing a Christian song, it's like, well, but like it, so you're kind of like middle ground, like me, like I'm on more of the agnostic side, but I appreciate other people's beliefs and I respect them. And it sounds like that's what that tries to do. So therapeutic music, you playing the jaw harp, you playing the spoons, like what is it?
Oh, so threshold music aside, there is this other organization called Music for Healing and Transition Program. And they train musicians to be therapeutic musicians, which is another beast entirely. And so in that training, which again was another year-long process, really intense and completely mind-blowing at certain points, we are trained to look at the clinical condition of the patient. So they might be coming out of surgery. We might be stationed in a hospital we might be assigned to the emergency room for a night. And so we never know what's going to come our way, but we know that it's going to be traumatic. Or we might be assigned to hospice and someone is in the process of dying. So we adjust our music to create a healing condition that provides the best environment for healing for that patient in that moment. So if someone comes in and they can't get their heart rate under control and the respiration is really fast because they've just been through something traumatic, we will play our music at a rate that gradually slows down. And the body will entrain to that rhythm, and the body rhythms will slow down as well. Or if someone is full of anxiety or pain,
shout out,
and is having a really hard time resting, we will play music in a more flowing fashion. Doesn't have a specific time signature, but there's lots of space to breathe. So we might sing or play a phrase and then stop and take a breath. And then play another flowing phrase and then stop and take a breath. And eventually the anxiety level, the pain level, and this is documented because this organization has set out to build the research base for this kind of music. But the music acts on the body in a way, and the brain in a way that reduces anxiety, reduces the need for pain medication, sleep medication. In the case of someone who's dying, we might take a piece of music and pull it completely apart and just play a chord or sing a note. Make it beautiful, but just a note. And then space. And then the next time the patient breathes, we time it to their breath. Another chord, another note. And then we wait. And then another note. And in that way, we're creating a beautiful environment, but it's one that doesn't pull them back in. It doesn't draw them and tie them back into this world. It gives them space to go where they need to go. And that's really beautiful. And there was one moment at Hospice of the Panhandle with this medical student, God bless her, she did not know what she was getting into. She knew that there was a therapeutic musician with a handpan. I play the handpan. Are you familiar with it?
Handpan.
Yep. It's the instrument that looks like a big UFO.
Okay, I got to look this up.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so we got a hand pan. Okay, let's see images.
Yeah.
Oh, is this like Tibetan bowl music type stuff? Oh,
well,
no, this is different.
Well,
okay.
they are both certainly metallophones.
Right.
But the handpan is actually based on, oh, now you're going to get my teaching mode here. It's actually based on the Jamaican steel drum. So think about the bowl of a Jamaican drum where you hit different notes and they have different sound, different notes on a piano, if you want to think about it.
Right.
This is the same idea, only it's popped out. It becomes convex. They create a resonating chamber underneath. That second half, that underneath half, is a big hollow chamber. So the sound, when you strike one of those oval tone fields, resonates inside and then comes out. And it's deep and gorgeous. And so each one, each instrument is tuned to a specific kind of scale and a specific key. So this one is a Kurdish scale, tuned to the key of D.
Got it.
Yeah.
And then we got a 9-tone and a 10-tone. Is that like different like levels of tones?
9 keys.
Gotcha. Okay.
9 keys on the piano versus 10 keys. And then in the middle is a ding. It's a little note at the very top, and that's the bass note. It's the very deepest note. And so you can play in beautiful flowing phrases, you can play chords, you can play percussion strikes, but I've learned to play it as a therapeutic musician to meet whatever the clinical need of the patient in. But back to my hospice story, and she knew that a therapeutic musician was coming in with a handpan. She totally wanted to see that in operation. So they immediately send me with this poor medical student to the side of a woman who was in her last moments. And she was so typical, kind of curled up in a fetal position, and very irregular breath, the Cheyne-Stokes breathing that is typical at the end of life when all of those body rhythms have kind of become unmoored. So breathing is no longer regular. And so there'll be long pauses in between a breath. Might be a quick breath and then nothing. And you think, was that it? Was that it? Is she... No, there's another breath, so I'm watching her chest for those chest falls to watch for when I can strike the next tone. And so medical student is watching me, watching the patient, and I'm there with the patient, striking on the breath, just creating this soundscape because the notes hang in the air. It's really beautiful.
That must be why it's $2,000. But
and that's a mass-produced kind of entry model. They can go way up there.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, they're making me calm just hearing about it, so I can see why.
At any rate, at some point after I started playing, this woman drew her last breath, and then we're waiting, but there was no more breath. And so we looked at each other, this medical student and I did. Did that just happen? Maybe. And so I sent the medical student, I'll sit with the patient. Will you go get one of the nurses to check? And she had died. So the medical student got to see the therapeutic music in action, not in it is a healing sense, right? Because the best outcome for this woman at this point in her life cycle was to be released from
suffering.
Yep. And that's part of That's part of the work. Yeah.
It's so. This is so calming to talk about. It's weird.
It is weird.
Yeah, it's
I don't disagree with you.
You know, but so the physical stages, I always heard like, oh, their mouth is drawed and like different stuff. What if you die of, let's say you get there, let's just say it's old age and your body just starts wearing down. What is the usual signs? Or what are the usual signs? I got to get that right today.
Yeah,
English
okay.
major.
Yeah. I left my red pen at home.
Right. Thank goodness.
The first things that families will notice is sleeping more. So longer naps, more frequent naps. Maybe not sleeping at night, depending on what the disease process is. Dementia tends to be awake at night. But sleeping more, eating less, withdrawing from the things that usually they would interact with, like doing less gardening, not socializing as much, not interested in, going anywhere. And then some of the motor capabilities will start to fall away. So someone who was able to walk is no longer really strong enough to do that. And so they might graduate to a walker, then to a wheelchair, and then they're bedbound. So that kind of deconstruction happens. More and more sleep, less and less nutrients, less and less interest in drinking, until finally it's just sleep. Now the lack of interest in food and water is very emotional for families. That's almost sometimes the hardest thing to get around because, my gosh, did I starve my mother? Did she die of starvation because I didn't make her eat? But in fact, it is a natural part of the dying process. It's a way that the body prepares itself for death, that it will detach from these, survival oriented instincts to feed the body, to hydrate the body. Those things keep us alive. And so it's baked into us to have those things. But when the body is dying, it no longer, it understands in a way that we don't understand, but it knows I don't need to sustain this body anymore with lots of nutrients. I don't need to sustain life with more and more drink or whatever it is. So that's a natural process that actually creates the possibility of greater comfort for the patient. Part of that dying process is the leaching of calcium. It happened to my mother. The leaching of calcium from the bones into the bloodstream, which creates a sedative effect, so more sleep, but also has a pain relieving, an analgesic effect. So I have less and less pain. And if you put a feeding tube in me or force me to eat, that process gets disrupted. And by the way, my body is not going to process those nutrients anymore. So they're just going to sit. They're just going to sink to the lowest level and sit there and create more pain. So part of the teaching that hospice nurses do and that I do to reinforce that is to help families understand what the body will naturally do as it proceeds to die, as it goes through the dying process. It's going to withdraw from all of those practices that helped us survive because the body knows. The body knows what to do to bring a life into this world, and it knows what to do to take a life out of the world. And the less we interfere with that, often the more comfortable the patient is. Now, there are, for particular disease processes, there is pain that the disease process causes. And that's what the hospice medical team can assist with. So morphine becomes, microdoses of morphine can help with pain. It can also help with breathing issues for, pulmonary diseases. Morphine can often help the breathing ease. The gurgling sound that patients will have in those last moments when the swallow reflex itself has gone away. There are things that we can do for that, but you wouldn't want to have that patient drink anything because they can't swallow, right? That's why that mucus and liquid are kind of hanging out in the throat because they can't swallow. So adding more liquid into that is going to create choking. It's going to create aspirational pneumonia. It creates more problems than it solves. And for a dying body, there's not a problem to solve. It's just a process that we go through.
Wow. This is good to know. All right. We'll talk about some personal questions, and you don't have to answer these, but I'm just curious.
Okay.
So what are your thoughts on death? Like, and everything's open on this show. Like, we talk about religion all the time, and you don't have to, but I have my own thoughts, and I'm just curious. You're way more of a professional with it than I am, so I'm wondering what your thoughts are about it. About just the transition, like anything, like is there something more to it than we're just here and we're gone? Or is there, because it to me, I feel like there's something, I just don't know what it is. Yeah. I feel like there's this energy that we all share, and some things are not coincidence, you know?
My faith tradition is based in the Christian church, although we've been unchurched for a while. So I'm not necessarily religious about it, but I do believe that even if all you do is believe in physics, the law of physics that says energy, matter is neither lost nor destroyed, it just is transformed. And so even if I just go at it from a scientific viewpoint, I don't even need to bring faith into it.
Sure.
There is an energy that is unique to me. And when this body that's carrying it dies, do I know if it's going to continue? No, I don't know that. But I feel like there is some place that receives it.
Yep.
In the end.
Yep.
I also have had too many coincidences.
Oh, the one about your father alone is it's just so powerful.
Oh, well, there's even more about that. So a month after that happened, that connection at the point of death with my father in this bed I was singing to, we were in Georgia where my daughter lives, and we were on a lake there to celebrate our grandson's first birthday. And I walked down to the dock on this lake where we were at. My husband had started fishing for the day. He was planning to be there all day. And I went to bring him something. And as I walked onto the dock, I noticed on the kind of pillar there, a huge blue-green dragonfly. And as I walked past it, it flew up and landed on my shoulder. And I thought, well, that's weird. And so I walked down the dock to where my husband was sitting, and I said, hey, George, look, there's this dragonfly. And that dragonfly wouldn't leave. It just wouldn't leave. And I kept looking at it, and it kept looking at me. And my husband caught a fish, and we celebrated. And I thought, my dad would have been down here fishing with you. Dad, is that you?
Yeah.
Whenever my dad was fishing, there would always be dragonflies around. I thought that would just be too weird, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we laughed about it. Thought, well, that's just silly. But then I walked back up to the house, and this dragonfly would not leave my shoulder. And so I started singing to it, because what do? I sing. And it stayed with me. I went in the house, and it stayed on my shoulder. It never moved. And I did stuff in the house, and then I carried some cold water back down to my husband, and that dragonfly stayed there the whole time. And I'm convinced that it's my dad. It was my dad who was, kind of there when we're celebrating family, and he wanted to be there when George caught that fish, and it was his way of saying, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's my thought. I mean, I think it was. I mean, regardless, you felt that way so strongly.
Yeah.
He's for sure there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whether it's in the form of the dragonfly or the form of your memories, you know what I mean? He's there regardless.
Yeah.
So that's beautiful. Oh, man.
So I don't know what happens after. We know, hospice nurses know, end-of-life doulas know, that as someone approaches the point of death, in fact, it happened just this week with the veteran that I sat with. Very often at the end, the eyes are kind of half open. They're not really looking at anything. It's just kind of the way the musculature relaxes, the jaw opens, the eyes halfway open. But I noticed that at some point he started focusing on something that he could see above him, and he actually reached up out of the bed to reach toward whatever it was, whoever it was. And no evidence, but we see it often enough. Are this person's loved ones who have already passed, are they gathering to help bring this person over to that other side to be with them? You just don't know.
Yeah.
So there's something there.
Well, then on the scientific side, I think it all blends together so much, and we love to just say, no, it's this way. No, it's that way. I think it's all correlated because in the body's, from what I understand, when you go, your body releases a flood of DMT sometimes at the end into your brain, and that causes
DMT.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Do we know what that is?
So it's a molecule.
Okay.
You can actually, people actually do DMT.
Oh,
I'm not suggesting this, but people go on like these, it's not mushrooms, but it's kind of like a trip, like ayahuasca. Have you heard of that? Where they drink the tea and they have this experience.
Okay.
So anyway, what I understand is, when you go, it at the very end, it releases it in your brain, and memories and thoughts and all of these things come up. And, someone who is, loves their family, or someone who loves some particular thing, different things, it will cause them to relive that right then and there when they cross.
Yeah.
And, I think that's a beautiful thing that the body is designed to do this. Yeah. And it makes so much sense, you talking about everything, the process. It makes sense that the body would be like, well, they're about to die. Let's give them one last shot of adrenaline. You know what I mean? And but at the same time, where did that come from? Yeah. Why is that there? And them being able to see this most likely beautiful memory, because that's usually the people's DMT experience is something. I mean, it could be traumatic, could be different things, but I love to think about stuff like that, because I think like we just love to just know everything, but sometimes you're like, I don't know, but you got to admit there's something to it. Yeah. I mean, regardless,
there has to be.
Yeah. Another kind of hard question, but I think this is very relative. So when I was young, and this has nothing to do with what you do, but do you know Jack Kevorkian? Okay. So when I was young, I always heard Kevorkian in the news and stuff, and I always took it as like this bad guy. I never really knew anything. Yeah. And then later on, I come to figure out Jack Kevorkian was a guy who would assist like terminal patients to die. Yeah. In assisted suicide. Y'all know I don't edit words. That's essentially what he was helping to do in cases. I can't remember how many cases it was. And I can't remember if he ended up getting charged. I can't remember exactly. I'll have to look that up. Yeah. But as I grow older, my thoughts are kind of changing on that type of thing.
This is another very emotional topic.
Sure.
For families to deal with, for individuals to deal with. Because all of us, I think, have been affected in our families by suicide. And in fact, in current terminology, assisted suicide, we don't use that phrase anymore, because suicide is, because you think of suicide as someone who is mentally ill, is dealing with a mental illness, and that, or an addiction, and so there's some kind of disorder there that has made them take this step. Medical aid in dying is the more wordy but maybe more accurate phrase that's used now, and it's still not without its detractors, but I think people are thinking about it differently, partially because the language has changed around it, and partly because states and organizations have put in the work to build safeguards around it, so that the fears of, for example, a state or a government using that as a way to kind of get rid of people that it's not convenient to take care of, like the mentally or physically challenged, or people who are drug addicted, or the homeless, some things that are being actually talked about in some governments now. But organizations and states have put in the work to build in kind of protocols, medical and legal protocols, that preserve it for the specific population that it's meant for, which is people who are facing an intractable, incurable, and painful, excruciating death, who wish to make use of it, and who go through various stages of review and interview processes to make sure that they're not doing it under duress, that they're not doing it out of fear or anything but a very rational decision that I no longer want to. I don't want to stay alive in order to suffer this terrible end.
Sure.
And we offer this to our pets, and we would be considered cruel to withhold it from them, right? We don't want our pets to suffer, but we'll require that our elders suffer.
Doesn't make sense. Well, I mean,
I don't want to say we're more than animals, because we're learning more and more about animals, and we're not so different.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think, and it's a complicated thing.
It is very complicated.
Yeah. And to clarify, I won't go through all of Kevorkian's stories, but it looks like he was convicted of second-degree murder.
Yeah, there you go.
In Michigan. So I can't remember what happened after that. So y'all can look it up. But that's the thing is like, and I don't know, I understand someone who would have a huge drawback for that, like because of their religious beliefs and different things like that. It's like, they probably are thinking like, are we making a mistake? Are we like, we don't want to, mess anything up? Like, so, but empathy is always what I come back to. It's like all situations, I'm going to try and be empathetic as possible. Yeah. And that's one of them that.
There is another form that this takes that eliminates the burden of liability or guilt or whatever you want to call it from the medical team and even from the family. And that's called VSED, voluntarily stopping eating and drinking. And that is simply the individual person choosing, even before the body will naturally make that decision and begin to draw back that instinct for food and water, to voluntarily stop it and thereby speed the dying process for myself.
Okay.
So if I know that I'm facing this terminal, incurable, very painful death, I may enter into a contract with my family that I'm going to do this, and you're not to give me anything. You're not to put me on a feeding tube or anything. Just let me go through this process. And I'll stop.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the body will naturally die.
Yeah. Wow. So much to this. And all this being said, I never even asked you the name of your, what's the name of your business? Where can people find you?
It's River Home Doula Services, riverhomedoula.com. I'm Tracy at riverhomedoula.com. And the name comes from one of my Threshold songs. It also comes from the fact that the river has been my home for the past 23 years almost. We live right on the Shenandoah River. Ooh. Outside of Charlestown. So that's our backyard. As we go into our neighborhood, we see the hills leading down to the Shenandoah where we are, and the Blue Ridge beyond. And it's the Eastern Panhandle, that little section is the one spot in West Virginia where John Denver's song is actually true.
Oh, nice. All right. Tell everyone your thoughts. Is it West Virginia or is it Western Virginia that he's singing about?
Well, it was West Virginia way before he wrote that song. Well, he didn't write the song.
Well, it was him and another dude that was on like a road trip or something. I can't remember the exact.
Anyway.
I mean, it's West Virginia.
It's
Y'all
West
stop
Virginia.
It. Yeah. In Jefferson County, right?
Jefferson County, that's correct.
Yeah. Beautiful place.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. Down here, there's probably a little more hills where you are. Yeah. But there's a place up there that I got Eggs Benedict. There's a diner in Charlestown.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went up there and I filmed. There's a really nice daycare there, super awesome lady. But there's a diner up there, and I cannot think of the name of it, but some of the best Eggs Benedict I've ever.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, there you go. I think it's called Mountain View Diner.
Mountain View Diner. They're under new management now, so they have little different name.
Gotcha.
I don't know what it is, but yeah, that was a good place for many, many years.
Yeah, good stuff. All right. Final thoughts. What would you like to tell people out there to give them a little comfort? Like to kind of say, don't be so scared.
Yeah.
We're in this together.
There's a line in the movie Braveheart when Guinevere is it Guinevere? Yeah. Guinevere is talking to her father-in-law, who's very cruel. No, not Guinevere. It's whoever the queen. Anyway, a queen is saying to her father-in-law, "Death comes to us all."
Yeah.
And she's saying it in not a nice way to him.
Right.
Because he was not a nice man. Yes. Sophie Marceau. Oh my gosh, she's gorgeous.
She is she plays Princess Isabel.
There you go.
Yeah.
Death comes to us all.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the creepy part of this particular episode of Creepalachia. But
well, we do beautiful stuff too. This is part of it.
Yeah. Death is the one thing that we're all guaranteed. We all go through it, whether we're rich or poor, no matter the color of our skin, our faith or lack of it, it's going to find us. And so we have spent in Western culture and maybe particularly in American culture, a lot of money. There are multi-billion-dollar industries built on our desire to keep death at arm's length and to postpone it as long as possible. But it comes for us all. And there used to be a time when death happened in the context of the family. You would grow up seeing your uncle who was next door and your grandfather who lived in the back room. You would see them grow old and get sick, and they would die in the house in their beds with all the family around them. And the wake would maybe happen in the living room, and they might bring the preacher in at the very end to put you in the ground. But it was mostly the family that took care of that. And that all changed, and we handed that work over to the medical establishment, who doesn't deal with death very well. Mm-hmm. They don't like to admit that death happens because death is a failure in the medical community.
If everyone died before they got to them,
you never make any money.
Exactly.
Yeah. So there are a lot of reasons why we have this weird bifurcated relationship with death. We deny it, and we don't talk about it because, God, if we talk about it, maybe it'll happen. It's going to happen. But then we're also, on the other hand, fascinated with it. And there's this other whole big sets of industries around horror music and slasher flicks and gaming that's terribly cruel and bloody and violent and piles of dead bodies everywhere. And we'll pay loads of money to put that in our heads. But let's not talk about what we're going to do with grandma next year, right?
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah.
We're weird about it. And so end-of-life doulas are part of a growing community of people that include medical doctors and hospice nurses and all of these people who want to re-normalize the fact of death and teach people how to talk about it, how to care for each other. Because at the end, all we have is each other, right? And to help each other through these moments and to be present with each other and not locked into fear or regret. I only had one chance to serve my mother, and I had to do it right. And so I want to be part, if I can help a family do that part. That's what I want to do.
Well, I love it. So glad you're doing this. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to have a very peaceful transition because of it. And I got to leave people with some motivating words on living. So mine comes, you did Braveheart. I'm going to do Gladiator.
Okay.
So there's toward the end, so Maximus loses his wife and his son in the worst way possible.
Oh, that's so.
And his buddy,
scene.
yeah. So his buddy, you know, they're gladiators going through being slaves and, you know, fighting their way in the uprisings coming back. And he tells him, he says, you're going to see your wife and son in the afterlife again, Maximus, but not today. Not today. So there we go.
There you go.
Rage into the dying
Not
light.
Today.
There we go. Yep. Well, I appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Everyone else out there, before you leave, be sure to like this video, subscribe to Creepalachia if you haven't. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, take a minute and leave a review. That'll really help the show be found. And we are on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and we do have merch now, creepalachia.shop. Go ahead and check it out. And everyone else, always remember, above all else, long live Appalachia.